Trade diplomacy is key to the nation's approach with Vietnam. As Prime Minister Morrison jets in today, that's our top story here on AM Agenda. He's hoping increases in economic ties will try and prove a relationship that will counter increasing Chinese influence in the region. Let's go live to our political correspondent Annalise Nielsen, who is in Hanoi and joins us live. Annalise, it's the first standalone visit by an Australian Prime Minister to Vietnam in decades.
That's right, Kieran. The first since 1994. Prime Ministers have come and gone before, but for summits and different trade meetings. And so this is quite significant that this is a standalone visit, that there will be a state banquet in the Prime Minister's honour, and that he has chosen to come to Vietnam very early on in this new Morrison government. So it is something where he is trying to bolster the ties between the two countries, and there's a few different reasons to do that. Primarily, it's about trade, as you say. It is about the fact that Vietnam has a very booming economy, that they've had two-way trade in particular grow between Vietnam and Australia to $14.5 billion last year. But that rapid growth is second only to India. So there's a lot of opportunity here. The first event that will be held by the Prime Minister this evening will be at Chamber of Commerce event. And there's going to be a number of Australian businesses there, including companies like Linfox, who want to increase transactions through Vietnam because it is quite strategically located. Also RMIT, there's a lot of opportunities for more study to come out of Vietnam. And so there is plenty on the agenda today. And that's what the Prime Minister is saying is his key focus.
Vietnam is one of the region's economic success stories over the last decade, and it reflects the significant steps it has taken to liberalise its economy. Our relationship with Vietnam has never been stronger, and my first official visit will be an important opportunity to drive forward that strategic partnership.
What is very much front of mind for both Vietnam and Australia, though, is the increasing dominance of China in Southeast Asia. And that's why we're seeing that real pivot in Australia's foreign policy approach away from the Pacific, where it's been quite recently, up to now Vietnam and Southeast Asia. Vietnam's had quite a tense relationship with China in the past, in particular over territorial waters off the Vietnamese coast. In their exclusive economic zone, it's previously been breached by the Chinese. When they've built an oil rig without permission in their waters, they did have to remove it. But just in the last few weeks, that we have seen another Chinese vessel making exploratory trips through the same region with a Coast Guard protection, which has been seen as quite provocative. And the idea is that they think that they will be trying to build another oil rig. So there is very much on the agenda the chance that tensions are escalating. We know Australia, with the backing of the US, has been trying to increase their presence in this region to try to counteract that issue and in particular keep those trade routes open, which we saw the Prime Minister refer to yesterday when he made his Strait of Hormuz announcement about how Australia is very keen to protect trade routes. But it seems like both Australia and Vietnam know exactly what it's like to be wedged between two superpowers.
China is at the moment asserting its claims inside Vietnam's exclusive economic zone, and that is proving particularly contentious. For Scott Morrison, what's important is that Vietnam remains resolute in its defence of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, because maintaining UNCLOS has significant implications for Australia and for its Pacific territories, its Indian Ocean territories.
So, Kieran, Prime Minister Scott Morrison is expected to arrive later today, and he'll be straight off to that business breakfast. Friday is going to be jam-packed with back-to-back meetings with Vietnamese officials. He's also stopping by the grounds where they're building the Vietnamese Grand Prix, and then will also make a trip to Ho Chi Minh's home to pay his respects to the former leader. It's going to be a very quick visit before he jets out Saturday morning first thing, but plenty on the agenda.
Yeah, quick visit, but symbolic as well, Annalise, isn't it? Because it's not just a bilateral relationship, it's also Vietnam is a senior figure within ASEAN, and having heard from the Foreign Minister recently talking about the need to engage with that group, ASEAN, as part of, I guess, a stabilising force in the region in the context of this very assertive China that we see right now.
Absolutely, and you can't discount the fact that ASEAN is being chaired by Vietnam next year, and so that's another reason that the Prime Minister was keen to get here very early on so that they can be controlling the dialogue at ASEAN, because that is becoming, as you say, one of the key ways that Australia and other regional partners can control what's happening in their region as opposed to being wedged in between China and the US, as we heard John Blaxland mention just a moment ago. But it's something where Vietnam has also played their cards quite well. They haven't always sided with the majority at ASEAN. They've notably stepped out of line with the other nations, and so they have flexed their muscles in that way enough that they are seen as very important partners. It was escalated, that strategic partnership, as you say, between Australia and Vietnam just a few years ago, and that means that there are yearly bilateral meetings between the leaders and the defence ministers, and it seems like there will be even a further escalation of diplomatic relations even after this trip.